The tragedy of Squid Game is that almost everyone gets the tragedy completely wrong. This idea that their show is some brave critique of capitalism is a shallow take that frankly is an insult to the actual message the show is trying to tell you. This is not a political allegory, it's a masterfully crafted argument that human nature itself is a closed loop of failure. And the show's supposed hero isn't the exception to the rule, he's the goddamn punchline that proves it. The quote-unquote capitalism argument seems solid on the surface, desperate people drowning in debt forced into a death game for the amusement of the rich. It's a clean allegory, almost too clean. The writers pull a brilliant narrative sleight of hand that most viewers ignore, and it happens right here.
동의서 제3항 참가자 과반수가 동의를 하면 게임은 중단된다.
Article 3. If a majority of players agreed to suspend the game is suspended. This one clause shatters the entire capitalist prison narrative. This isn't a prison, it's a casino with a clearly marked exit door. After witnessing the industrial-scale slaughter of red light, green light, they vote to walk right through it. The system, for all of its menace, promises to honor the democratic result. However, once they do accept to keep the games going, they cannot go back, and of course, they accept. And the lazy analysis of most content creators stops right there, claiming, see, social economic coercion, man, they have no choice. Bullshit. Watch them when they're out. Look past the loan shark. Gi-hun isn't just broke, he's paralyzed by shame. The way he talks with his mother, how he mentions his daughter, it's subtle but it's definitely there. Sang-woo isn't just facing prison, he's facing the unbearable humiliation of admitting to his mother that he, the golden boy from SNU, is a catastrophic failure. Their suffering isn't just financial, it's existential. The world outside isn't just economically brutal, it's the psychological equivalent of getting your nuts twisted. And that is the critical distinction. The game doesn't force them to keep playing. It presents an alternative to their own private hells and they consciously choose to keep going. The system doesn't need to be a prison when the inmates are clawing at the door to get back in. This isn't a story about economic determinism, it's a story about the devastating gravity of personal failure. The capitalism critique isn't the point, it's the camouflage. So if the game isn't a meat grinder designed to punish the poor, then what the hell is it? What is the true function of this meticulously designed system? The easy answer, the one the show dangles in front of you with the cartoonishly evil VIPs, is that it's just bloodsport for the mega rich. But that's the kiddie pool explanation. The real answer is infinitely more bleak, and it's given to us right at the end of Season 1 in the final confession of the game's architect, Oh Hail-nam. He didn't create this elaborate charade because he was sadistic, he created it because he was bored. The kind of bored that only comes when you have enough money to realize that every human experience, rich or poor, is ultimately just a pattern. Il-nam, having seen everything from the top and the bottom, came to a terrifying conclusion that rich or poor, when stripped of circumstance, human beings are fundamentally the same. They're predictable, selfish, and ultimately disappointing. The game, then, is his grand philosophical proof. It's an engine designed to strip away the constructs of society like law, morality, and civilization to reveal the raw, unchanging source code of human nature underneath. It uses childhood games not for irony, but for purity. These are simple systems with simple rules designed to isolate one variable, your will to survive at the expense of others. And the thesis it's designed to prove is that human nature is a closed loop. It's a deterministic cycle masquerading as free will. Think of the marbles game. There's no external threat, no guard to kill you. The game simply creates a scenario where the most logical, predictable path to survival is to emotionally manipulate and betray someone who trusts you. It doesn't force Sang-woo to betray Ali or Gi-hun to trick Il-nam, it simply creates the conditions where they will inevitably arrive at that choice themselves. Every act of kindness becomes a liability, every bond a weakness to be exploited. It's a giant bloody "I told you so" written on the scale of hundreds of human lives, proving that even a good man will break the same way as a bad one. But a philosophical proof is only as strong as its evidence, and to truly understand the terrifying power of the game's argument, we have to look past the grand design and focus on its most important data points, the characters themselves. The game's function isn't spectacle, it's science. This entire facility, the clean lines, the numbered uniforms, the surgical precision of the violence, isn't an arena, it's a behavioral laboratory. The VIPs might be the giddy audience funding the whole thing, but the team behind the curtains are the researchers observing a dataset, betting on the predictable outcomes of their experiment. They want to know when people will break. But this isn't just a lab, it's a lab with an agenda. It has a hypothesis it is desperate to prove, and it will actively intervene to protect the integrity of its results. And this is the single most damning piece of evidence. The frontman himself, the lead researcher, enters the experiment. He sheds his ontological status as an observer and becomes a variable, Jung-il, for one reason, to get close to Gi-hun and personally sabotage his rebellion from the inside. Think about what that means. The system detected an anomaly, a previous winner returning to break the game, and deployed its most powerful asset to neutralize him. This isn't a game of chance. It's a self-correcting system, a controlled environment that actively purges any result that might disprove its core, cynical thesis. It's not just testing humanity, it's rigging the test to guarantee a failing grade. It's not really an experiment to discover what is true or not, it's more akin to wanting to prove something at whatever cost necessary. But Gi-hun becoming a conscious counter-agent that seeks to destroy the game itself creates a whole new problem for the experimenters. He's no longer just a variable, he's armed with the knowledge of a victor and the conviction of a revolutionary, and he organizes a full-blown insurrection. Surely, this is the one thing the system couldn't predict. A direct collective assault on its authority led by the one man who knows its secrets, right? So the sage is set. The hero sparks an insurrection. It's the moment every underdog story promises. The organized collective fist punching up at the monolithic system. For a second, it's glorious. They get weapons, they fight back, you feel that surge of catharsis. Holy shit, you feel like you're watching Hunger Games 3 back in 2014. But the system doesn't flinch. The frontman barely seems concerned. Why? Because the system knows something every hopeful narrative ignores. The most powerful weapon in its arsenal isn't the guards, it's the guy standing next to you. The rebellion is not a heroic tragedy, it's a diagnosis, and the diagnosis is fucking terminal. The entire uprising is a Hobbesian nightmare made real, a case study in why revolutions fail. It isn't crushed by overwhelming force, it eats itself alive. One player gets scared and deserts his post. Another betrays the cause for a bigger share of the prize. The noble collective dream dissolves into a pathetic, primal scramble for individual survival. Honestly, it's kinda beautiful to see that on screen for once, in a horrifying way. The system didn't need to crush the rebellion, it just needed to wait. It correctly predicted that human nature, stripped bare and put under pressure, is a self-destruct sequence. The game makers didn't build a prison, they built a petri dish, and they already knew what kind of bacteria they were growing. The collective dream dies with a pathetic whimper. The group is a failure, but the individual nightmare is just beginning. What does witnessing this absolute corrosion of hope do to the soul of the one man who was supposed to be different? This is where the story of Seong Gi-hun completely disintegrates. The game's ultimate goal was never to kill him in Season 2 and onwards, it was to unmake him. It was to completely destroy him in order to make him pay for his sin of trying to fight back against the system. To perform a live, televised deconstruction of a good man and prove that goodness is just a performance that flakes away under pressure. And it is fucking devastating to watch. Remember the Gi-hun from the first game? The one who held onto his empathy like a shield? Well, that man is dead by Season 3. What's left is a vessel for rage and trauma, and the game gives him the perfect target, Dae-ho. He is the coward whose fear cost them everything, the character who represents the inner survival instinct within all humans to let go and protect itself. He's the guy who serves the narrative purpose of showcasing the extent of the power the games have over the characters, and in this moment, Gi-hun isn't a hero, he is an agent of raw vengeance. He snaps, he strangles the life out of him with his bare hands, and in that moment, the experiment is over. The front man has won. They took the one man who seemed to be the exception and proved he was just like everyone else. They proved that under the right condition, empathy gives way to rage and morality gives way to survival. As the director himself said, Gi-hun was never meant to be a superhero, he was meant to be a failure. His corruption is the game's grandest payoff. So if the hero is broken, if his soul is corrupted, what's the point of his final act? Does his sacrifice to save a newborn baby even matter? Is it a last attempt at redemption, or is it the system's final, most twisted victory? So we arrive at the end. Does this one final act of selfless sacrifice redeem Gi-hun? Does saving this child, the literal embodiment of the future, finally count as a win? Does he break the system? The emotional knee-jerk answer is yes, it's a beautiful, tragic human moment. It feels like a victory, and that feeling is the show's last and most vicious lie. His sacrifice is not a victory, it is the final perfect validation of the experiment. The game makers bet that human nature was a closed loop, and Gi-hun's quote-unquote heroic choice is the last data point that proves them right. He is given a choice between personal survival and playing the quote-unquote good man, and he predictably chooses the latter. His death doesn't shatter the system, it completes the dataset. Look at the aftermath. The game doesn't stop, the VIPs aren't horrified, and the frontman calmly retrieves the baby, which is now just another asset in his arsenal. Gi-hun's grand, noble gesture is absorbed by the machine without leaving a scratch. It is an act of profound personal meaning that is, simultaneously, an act of absolute systemic irrelevance. He proved he was human, not a horse, and in doing so, proved the system is so perfectly cynical, it can account for individual acts of humanity without ever being threatened by them. The ultimate tragedy of Squid Game isn't that Gi-hun dies, it's that his death serves the thesis. He didn't break the game, he was its final, most elegant proof of concept. And now that we've deconstructed every part of this machine, the fake critique, the cynical experiment, the failed rebellion, and the corrupted hero, we can finally see what this story in its totality is truly trying to tell us. What it tells us is that the entire structure of Squid Game is a lie, not a lie within the fiction, but a deliberate narrative trap set for the audience. We started by tearing away the camouflage of a capitalism critique only to find a cold clinical experiment underneath. An experiment that didn't just observe but actively intervened to ensure its subjects failed. An experiment that watched a noble rebellion collapse under its own flawed humanity, and one that proved it could systematically deconstruct the soul of its one supposed antithesis. Every step was designed to lead us here. Squid Game is a masterclass in misdirection. It presents itself as a classic underdog versus the system story, making us root for the hero to burn it all down. But the show's actual didactic purpose is to prove that the system is inescapable, not because of its money or guards, but because the predictable, broken nature of the individual will always lead them back to the game. The tragedy isn't that the game exists, the ultimate tragedy is that Gi-hun's final choice is the final signature on the experiment's conclusion. He proves the game maker's cynical thesis about humanity was correct all along. He doesn't break the cycle, he is the cycle. And that is the show's final, most brutal joke. It builds a world that makes us desperately crave a hero and then uses our own desire for a heroic narrative to prove its point, that in a system this perfectly cynical, the very idea of a hero might be the most dangerous and most naive fiction of all. The cynical system in Squid Game is a brutal, overt cage built out of desperation and force, but that's just one model of control. What happens when the system is a clean corporate office you willingly walk into every day. That's why I explored how Lumen Industries created a technological schism in the human soul in this video on Severance. Watch that next to understand why the most terrifying dystopia isn't the one with guns, but the one with a keycard and a smile. Feel free to subscribe for more, and as always, thank you for watching.